I am familiar with it, yes. I wasn't before my master's. I didn't know. I thought it was just really like we feel it out as we go along.
Yes, I am. So I have not signed one or interacted with one myself, but the process is quite familiar with me. It's sort of an interaction between the supervisor and the student to sort of get you both on the same page before you go forward with your project.
It makes me think of an agreement between two parties. In the case of a memorandum of understanding between a supervisor and a student.
It's basically to have an understanding of what both parties expect of each other. What is the working relationship, what should the supervisor put in, what should the student put in, and what they're both willing to take out of that time working together.
The projects are so widely different, so they work on such different scales of space, time, and also the personalities of the students and their own backgrounds. So some of them require more input, some of them require less input, some of them are much more motivated, some of them really require regular meetings, others don't require any meetings at all and they are off on their own.
Humans are so different in backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, personalities, etc. But there's not really a silver bullet student or supervisor, so you kind of have to have an adaptive, dynamic approach to these kind of roles. In other words, you have to kind of adapt to supervise different students, different from other students that may differ in some of those aspects.
I have, with regards to my work, we had to change what I was writing, not particularly the focus, but we disagreed on what I want to write and how he wants me to do it.
So I think in solving challenges, communication is very, very important. Because most people don't find it easy, of course, because culturally, as a black woman, it's very challenging, especially having to talk to an older man.
Students tend to arrive in the lab and think that, especially at postgraduate level, that if something's happening in your personal life, that it needs to be in your personal life, but everything always spills over. So I think I've been lucky, I haven't had too many challenges, but I think it's important to establish a relationship with your students where they don't give you details about what's going on, but are comfortable enough to tell you if something's happening, because if something happens in your personal life, it's going to affect your work. And I think the only challenges I've experienced is some students are more reluctant to do that than others.
What is important is to have an upfront talk about what you expect. I'm sure as a student you know yourself what you need, how much support you need, and make sure that your supervisor understands the amount of support you need. I would like to have a co-supervisor, or I would not like to have a co-supervisor. Those things you can express right at the beginning. And of course also from the supervisor side as well, directly saying to the students, I expect this and this and this of you, and I know that you are an individual, you have your own needs and so on, so tailor your needs according to what you need to deliver here, and then I can also bring in my part.
So communicating and also verbalizing your needs. Yeah, like I need to actually see you in person rather than just emailing you. And from the supervisor's side, I'm sure that they have expectations as well. So they also need to communicate the expectations. They can't just leave you in the air and not ask, can I get a chapter? And then after 2 months be like, why aren't you doing anything?
The impression I get is that actual communication doesn't seem to happen consistently or steadily. It's either a case of one person speaking to the other or at the other, or they're communicating about certain things but not about all of the things. For example, some of the process issues or issues around independence and identity and so on. Your identity changes a lot as a postgraduate student. So you start out being more undergraduate perhaps, or more dependent, and then you're supposed to become independent, especially at a PhD level, and that's a tricky process. Sometimes the supervisor isn't quite ready for that to happen. Sometimes the student isn't, and it can lead to frustration. So I think these sorts of things need to be discussed occasionally.
I think it's a very, very critical, very critical document, regardless of where you are within the academic space. It's very, very critical. It protects both the supervisor and the student, and we're able to manage their expectations very well within the framework of the MoU. Because without it, I mean, when things go wrong, then you really you don't have a leg to stand on. It's like a he said, she said situation. So the MoU will especially play a critical role for conflict resolution in terms of getting the students to keep up with what they agreed to, and then also the supervisor to make sure that they're keeping up with what they committed to.